So for the purpose of this lab, you are going to actually deploy your site. Keep in mind, if you are using any libraries or frameworks that don't require you to run a server, then you can continue to host your site on Infinity Free if you chose to do that in the last lab. Or if you chose to do GitHub Pages or anything else, you should be able to do that. GitHub Pages does support Jekyll. So if you're using Jekyll, you're good to go there. If you're using anything else that requires you to run a server, you are going to have to use a different provider to actually get your site hosted up. Back in the day, I used to recommend Heroku because it was really easy to get it set up, but they no longer offer their free tier. So we're going to try using Google Cloud. You are welcome to use any other provider you'd like. You can use AWS, which is Amazon. You can use Microsoft Azure. You can use, if you want to pay for Infinity Free, you can do that. My goal is to have y'all get as much exposure and experience as possible without spending money. That being said, Google Cloud does offer you $300 in credits. However, it also requires you to put in a credit card or debit card. So if you don't have access to that, you're gonna have to try and find an alternative. It does also support, if you have a checking account, you can put in your bank routing number and your checking account number. If you are uncomfortable with that, you'll have to find some alternatives because unfortunately they do not support having something like a prepaid account. We don't expect you to use the $300 credit, not even close. So you shouldn't get charged. And you can also, once the class concludes, once we've graded your assignments or at whatever level you're most comfortable, you can always just delete your credit card information or delete the project from Google Cloud so that it's not being serviced and you won't be charged anything. Again, it'll only charge you if you go past the $300 credits that they offer you. AWS and Azure will also likely offer some amount of free credits to get you started. So check those options out, see which one you like, see which one you're most comfortable with, and go from there. For the purpose of the recorded lecture, I'm only going to demo it with Google Cloud since I already had an account set up from a previous example. So I'll post this link in the notes so that you have access to it. I'm using Node.js, so I'm following this specific tutorial. But if you're using another service, they do have the other tutorial available here and you can follow that. It'll be very, very similar. The biggest difference is probably going to be when you set up your package.json, setting up the correct software that you need and setting up the correct run command. So you'll start by signing in. Yep, we're in the United States. We're going to continue. It's going to ask you to create add a payment profile, but keep in mind, you do get $300 of credit for free. So we don't expect you to go over these credits and we don't expect you to actually have to pay anything because this $300 in credits should be more than enough for the purposes of what we're doing. However, if you are uncomfortable with adding your credit card, which is a completely valid concern, or if you don't have access to a credit card, you can find an alternative service and see if there is an option where you can get a free version that doesn't require you to input a credit card. However, most services, even if they do give you X amount of free credits, they will require you to put in some sort of credit card so that when you run out of those credits, they can actually charge you. You can also just add the credit card information for the sake of the class. And then as soon as we're done with this assignment and as soon as it's been graded, you can delete your credit card information so to make sure that nothing gets charged. So again, I'm just going to pause while I input my info. Okay, so once you have inputted the credit card or banking information, you'll get to this page. So for this, we are just going to fill it out. And you can fill it out or you can actually just skip it. Once you created your account, the next step is to create a project. So we'll click on that button. For your project, I strongly recommend that you use a descriptive name. You can use the domain ideas that you had. Don't call it just, unit 7 or website or whatever, because if you end up choosing to use this for your final project, you're going to have a hard time figuring out which is which. I don't have an actual real website, so I'm calling it my sample website. I'm gonna store it in the default, which is under no organization, and we're gonna create it. Wonderful. Now that we've created our project, let's go back because we actually have to do some installation. So we're going to install the Google CLI. So let's first make sure that we have a current version. So we should have Python 3.8 or anything in between 3.8 and 3.12. So let's go. I'm gonna create a new tab. And I'm going to run Python-v. Oops. Python capital V. And we do have 3.10. So we should be good there. It's gonna offer us to install 11. That's fine. Da, 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 da. Okay. All right, so I have a Mac. Of course, it'll read what you have. So if you're on a Windows machine, it's gonna give you different options. I have a pretty old machine, so I don't have the M1 Silicon. So I'm gonna just use the 64-bit. I'm pretty sure that I do support, my computer does support 64-bit, but just to double check, I'm going to run this. And yes, it is a 64-bit. So you might want to double check. We have our installer here. So we extract the files and we can install the script. So on a Mac, I can just open a folder here or open a terminal at that folder, but otherwise you'll just open a terminal and navigate to wherever this folder is. Oh, gotta go up one. Okay, it's loading. Yeah, and I do want to use the .bash profile, so that's fine. I don't care about 3.11, and it looks like it's done. Fantastic. We should then be able to run init. So let's see if that works. Okay, fantastic. I want to use project 2. And actually, this doesn't matter because we're going to deploy it from a different part anyway. Go back to these instructions. da. We already have a directory, so we're not going to necessarily create this, but we do want to make sure that our package.json has the appropriate contents. You should already have a package.json if you are working with Node in particular, but if you don't, you'll have to create one, and I'm just going to update the one that I already have. So it wants us to add this guy. And of course, you don't want to have too much overlap, right? So I already have a name. So this is just I'm gonna call this my sample site. Description, it's helpful for you to have that. So do not have it as private because then we won't be able to access it. So leave that as false. Version is fine. The main, you'll call it whatever your file is called. Mine is called app.js. So I'm gonna delete that. I don't have a type yet, so I'll add that in. And the start for me, again, because that file is called app.js, it's going to be start app.js. Node, I'm actually using a very old version of Node, so I should check which version of Node I'm using. But, oh, come on. Okay, so 14.16. So you should be using a newer version of Node. I'm using the old version just because this is an old sample and I didn't feel like updating my node. Author, obviously your name. I already have that here. I'm going to move this up so that it's before author. I'm going to put this here. Delete those scripts because we already have the scripts folder. Author, license, dependencies. Okay, so that all looks good. So we have our files already created. And now we should be able to deploy, right? So I already have my app.js. And just to show you what that looks like for me, probably looks different for you. But this is my app.js. Again, I only have 2 pages and a 404. Yours is probably going to be a little more in depth because I'm just doing this as a quick sample. So to actually deploy it, on your cloud directory, in your source code directory, deploy from a source using the following command, gcloud run deploy. So you want to do this where your code actually is. So I have a terminal open here in my handlebars app folder. So I'm going to run this. Not like that. Actually, let me restart the terminal. When you install something new, you often have to restart your terminal so that bash recognizes, so that the bash script gets updated. Okay, fantastic. Handlebars app is fine. You can leave it, leave the defaults. Allow it to run APIs. Billing must be enabled. Okay, I thought I had enabled my billing, but apparently I did not. Oh, haha, I have to enable billing per project. Okay. All right. Take 84. You can choose whichever server you'd like. I'm on the East Coast, so I'm choosing East, but it really doesn't matter. Okay, so let's look at these logs. So I'm thinking I might have to change the port. That could very much be the issue. Do they want me to have port 8080? Yeah, that's probably what it is. So gonna update that. Can't believe I waited that long to have it not run. Gotta love it. All right, so updating my port. And we're gonna try again. Oh, come on. But I set the port to 8080. Okay, let me use the port exactly as they want me to. Oh, I need the process. That's why. Silly me. Very important. Don't do what I did and spend however long I've spent trying to figure out these issues. You want to make sure that you are pulling this in from the environment so that the server can actually give the instruction, or that your code can read the instruction from the server. Okay, this is getting out of hand. Okay, so I removed this path, which I wasn't using. I changed the require express to import express, which is what was in the sample code. And I moved the port variable creation and app listening to the port to the bottom of the code, which is how they have it in their sample. So hopefully we have better luck this time. I'm gonna double check that this works. Oh, haha. And that should hopefully do the trick. Oh my gosh, I think it's working. 80. Hell yeah, we got a site. All right, let's try to deploy this puppy again. Hell yeah, we have a working site. So we should be able to view our website. Fantastic. So all it takes to it is 3 hours of debugging. And you have your working website that is hosted and running using Node.js. So hopefully this was helpful. I will have trimmed it so you can't tell that I was debugging for over 3 hours. And if you have any questions, please post on Piazza.